Illinois Fighting Illini had back-to-back historic seasons, going and having 8+ wins in back-to-back years, 9+ wins. We factor in the bowl game and everything else there. For the Illinois Fighting Illini, Bret Bielema has done a fantastic job. We are going to preview their 2026 season here on the Big Ten Huddle, presented and brought to you by FanDuel, and we have Zach Guggenheim here with us once again. Zach, Illinois last season, some people had them as a top 10 team going into the season. This Illinois, yeah, you and I both, this Illinois team, they finished, though they should have finished top 25. They didn't because of stupidness, but, they should have finished as a top 25 team, and that would have been good for their, stats and things like that, because they would have had back-to-back ranked seasons. Anyway, I'm not bitter. It's fine. But Illinois, I do think, is in a little bit of a situation here where we could see a bit of a drop-off compared to what we've seen the past two seasons. A lot of new things going on for Illinois. Bret Bielema is still a phenomenal coach, somebody you and I are very high on, but there is, without a doubt, a few concerns that need to be addressed. And this one, Zach, what are your biggest storylines or narratives going into the season for Illinois in 2026?
Well, I think, honestly, the biggest one is can Bret Bielema finally turn the narrative around with Illinois? Because it seems like the outside world, not us and not people who actually know the Big Ten, but the outside world continue to doubt Illinois as a top 25 team. Like they fought and clawed to get votes last year. So I think that is honestly the big question mark for me, or big storyline, is can Bret Bielema kind of for the third year in a row get them to 8, 9, 10 wins, bordering on being a top 25 team, and kind of change the narrative of who Illinois is? Because I think in the outside world, people think of Illinois as, no offense to Purdue, I feel like they're the butt of our jokes a lot, but people kind of see Illinois as a Purdue-like program, which can have a great year or two, maybe even have a great 4 or 5 years, but then kind of plummet to obscurity. And I think Bret Bielema is trying to change the narrative there. So I think that's one. I think the other one really is, can Katin Houser replace Luke Altmyer and maybe even elevate this team further beyond?
Yeah, I think if Illinois is going to have a good season this year, I mean, we'll talk about it when we get to offense, defense a little bit, but Katin Houser is going to have to be a huge piece of making that happen. Now, I do not expect him to be as good as Luke Altmyer, but, Barry Lenny Jr. has been there for 5 years now. I think he's going into his 5th year this season as offensive coordinator. He's done a really good job under Bret Bielema. There's a few coaches there and kind of background staff that I have my own, I won't say issues with, but maybe questions about that, why Bret Bielema is letting them stick around. But I also know that Bret Bielema is somebody who doesn't necessarily always go to programs that are investing the highest amount into their staff. And as much as Illinois is a better program under Bret Bielema, I'm not sure if I see the staff investment financially. They did go out and get Bobby Hawk, which was good, and we'll talk about him here in a little bit. But I also have some concerns about that defense. With so much new going on at Illinois, it really is the narrative this season of, can Illinois continue excellence? Can this Illinois team, for the 3rd year in a row, go over their win total and really start to show people, hey, the 7.5 win total isn't right? You are going to have to look at us as being a team who is not just a guaranteed bowl game team anymore, but a team that is not guaranteed but very likely to win 8+ games a season.
Yep.
Yeah. So if we go into the offensive side of the things, Zach, then we start to look at, with Illinois, what are their, strengths and weaknesses? What are we confident in? What are we not confident in? Let's start on the offensive side of the ball. Zach, what are you most confident in with the Illinois team on the offensive side of the ball?
I'm not super confident about a lot of things on the offense.
Really? I think they've got some good pieces on offense.
I think that's the right. What you just said, I think, is kind of how I feel. They've got some good pieces. They're certainly in better shape than other teams in the Big Ten. Okay. But so and maybe you can help me formulate thoughts more. Like I like the idea of Katin Houser at quarterback. I like their backfield, right? Khalil Valentine, Aiden Laughery. I think they're good. I like the receivers. Like I think what they could do, right? They get a couple of transfers: Jay Platt, Alex Perry, two seniors, one from Florida Atlantic, one from Florida International. They did some good things at that group of 5 level. Here's my question is, do they just have pieces but no units that are like just rock solid? I think that's maybe my question.
I, I I can understand that. And when you think about that, that's kind of like Washington was last year on offense. They had pieces here and there that made you feel good about the team, but it wasn't necessarily anything where you were like, this is what you're leaning on the entire season. I liked what Illinois did in the offseason, going after JUCO players on the offensive line. And I think the concern was, okay, if you're bringing these guys in to start, you are a little concerned about that. But overall, I mean, they brought in some of the top JUCO players, and they're basically saying you're going to be on the 2 deep. So, I mean, with pretty much every single team in the nation, you can say, yeah, a concern is the 2 deep of the offensive line because it's just really hard to find deep offensive line. But I think Bret Bielema had a really good strategy here. Let's go out and get some JUCO guys and have them be in the 2 deep of our offensive line. And if Christian Martin works out at left tackle for you, I think could be a pretty good offensive line for Illinois. I really like their interior of Brandon Hansen. Jake Renfro, I think, is one of the better centers in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
I think he's in that conversation. Brandon Henderson as well. You got the Brandon and the Brandon right on the 2 sides of Jake Renfro there. So that's going to be interesting to see. I think this offensive line for Illinois is interesting. I'm not going to say they're the most confident group, but I'm also not going to say they're my least confident group. I think, honestly, like, the most confident group I'm going to say is the running back room for Illinois. As much as I do like the wide receivers, Hudson Clement, Alex Perry, Colin Dixon, I also think Colin Dixon could line up at running back a little bit this season. He could be used in a few different ways. And so if I'm including him in the running back room a little bit because of that possibility, I really like what Illinois has at running back. And I think that Khalil Valentine could have a really big season this year if he does tote the rock a number of times. But that's going to be difficult with Aiden Laughery and how much trust the staff seems to have for him.
Yeah. One thing to note about the running back room, let me talk wide receiver for a minute. But if you look at Colin Dixon and Hudson Clement's blocking grades, like Colin Dixon is like an A graded blocker.
Mm-hmm.
Hudson Clement is a B graded blocker. And so you combine that with the offensive line. I do agree with you that I think Valentine and Laughery, of anybody on this offense, I think those 2 guys really have a chance to shine with all the potential for the run block.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I played with thinking about Katin Houser as most confident, but I just haven't seen it yet. But I was texting with Sonny earlier today over at Locked On Illini, and he was saying that there is very, very high praise for Katin Houser right now and after spring ball and what he's doing in summer camp and stuff like that. So there's a whole lot of confidence there. I won't say that, I'm the most confident quarterback yet, but if Illinois is going to have a good season, it's going to take Katin Houser playing really well. And, I think that sounds like a good bet for that to happen. If I had to pick an area where I'm least confident, unfortunately, it's going to be a similar area that I've said with most teams, and it's going to be the tight end position for Illinois. Christian Abney, Devin Stoffel, Caden Fagan. Now, Caden Fagan, maybe he turns into something at tight end. He's a converted running back to tight end, and that works better sometimes than some people think if they have the prerequisite size and things like that they need. Caden Fagan was a pretty good blocker. He's a big back when he was in the backfield, so maybe he translates well over to the tight end position, but I'm kind of in wait-and-see mode with them. I'm not super concerned about the offensive line. I'm not super concerned about wide receiver, quarterbacks, so if I had to pick a group here, it's probably going to be the tight end position.
Again, I'm going to go a little different, and maybe this is my struggle with this. I feel like Illinois offensively is solid. Who's your game breaker? And that's probably maybe my biggest critique is I think wide receiver, running back, I think you've got good players everywhere, but who's your game breaker? I think that's maybe my biggest concern. is you don't
Yeah.
have anybody that can break the game open for you.
Good point. Good point. We switch over to the defense, Zach. I have not been shy about my concerns about the defense for Illinois. Concern number one, I think it's grown to kind of all of the front seven for me
Yeah.
with Illinois. If you look at some of the comments and stuff like that Bobby Hawk has made and Bret Bielema about the defense and stuff, they are going for Speedy instead of brute strength. Is kind of what you've read about a little bit out there, and I just hate that. Quite
Yeah.
point blank. I hate that, especially going to a 3-3-5 defense. That's what Nebraska went to last season. Now, I'm not saying a 3-3-5 can't work. We've seen it work in college football before. But I think if you combine the 3-3-5 with Speedy more than kind of, strong and strength, I think Illinois could be getting pushed around a lot this season. I think we could see possibly a little bit of Nebraska's defense this year for Illinois, where the secondary is really good. I feel really good about the secondary. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll just be honest. Like that's my most confident spot, or my least confident spot is that front seven. I mean, shocker, you got either secondary or front seven. But I mean, they bring back Matthew Bailey, Xavier Scott, Juice Clark. They got one of the best JUCO transfers, and Jaquan Morris. He's coming over. He was originally committed to USC. Now he's coming to Illinois instead. Mac Resich is a safety for Illinois that I think is going to do really well too. I don't think a lot of people know his name yet, but I think he's going to do a good job. And so, when it comes to passing the ball in Illinois, I think some teams are going to have some trouble. The problem is for Illinois, I think is most teams are going to be able to run the ball pretty effectively, and I think you and I are on the same page about that, Zach.
Yeah, it is interesting because like you look at some of the heights and weights for the defensive line. Isaiah Thomason comes over from Bowling Green at defensive end, 6'3", 285, like decent size. Guillermo Gallardo, a senior. I don't know where he came from. That he might have just been a walk on, but he's 6'3", 320 pounds, but he's played one snap. Carter Janke comes over from Penn. He's 6'5", 295. He's a defensive tackle. Darrell Prater, 6'3", 305 from Jacksonville State. Pat Farrell, 6'5", 285 at defensive tackle. So, like, they have size, but I think to focus more on speed, like there is curiosity there, especially when you already struggled defensively last year. And you're losing Gabe Yakus. Who's your pass rusher? Like, do you have, if you're going to be fast, you better be effective. Because if you can't rush the passer, like, I don't care how good your secondary is. And then stopping the run, if you cannot stop the run, again, it doesn't matter how good your secondary is, because at some point you're going to get faked out of your shoes and you're going to get long touchdowns over on top of your head.
Yeah. The interesting thing about this is we talk about how an older offensive line, an older defensive line is really kind of the key in some scenarios. And like Illinois does have one of the oldest defensive lines, not just in the Big Ten, but in the nation. Darrell Prater, Carter Janke, they are both redshirt seniors there. Pat Farrell is a redshirt junior. Will Holmes, he's a junior, but he's 25 years old. He started college a little bit late. Mason Merrigan, he is a redshirt junior as well. I mean, you have Parker Krim. He's a freshman that's going to probably be backing up Will Holmes, so that's a little bit younger there. But this is one of the oldest defensive lines in the Big Ten, maybe even in the country. So there should be enough, raw manpower strength here
Right.
to be able to have a good
Old man
defensive
strength.
line. Yeah, old man strength, I guess you could say. But I don't feel super confident about it. Now, if this defensive line proves me wrong, I think Illinois is in for a really good season this year. I don't think, from what I've seen on tape with some of these guys, from what I've seen with their play, especially at different levels. Carter Janke's coming over from playing at, I think it's Penn in the FCS, and he was pretty good there, but he wasn't anything spectacular. It just provides me some concerns that I think are going to need to be addressed. Zach, if we go to the schedule now, we look at who Illinois is playing. They have UAB, Duke, Southern Illinois, at Ohio State, Purdue, at Michigan State, by Oregon, at Maryland, Nebraska, at UCLA, Iowa, at Northwestern. Good for them. They don't have any back-to-back away games. The schedule works out pretty well for them. Even after their bye week, they're going to be home against Oregon. So I do think this is a schedule for Illinois that's pretty favorable. I think the problem is that you look at this schedule and there are some teams that they can certainly beat, but there are also some teams on here that are a little bit more on the up and up that I think Illinois could face some trouble with. At UCLA, at Northwestern, if UCLA gets it together by the end of the year and they're doing really well, if Northwestern, I mean, they're going to have their new stadium. They're going to be jacked for that. I think we've talked about Northwestern before. They're kind of a sleeper team that maybe could get 7 or 8 wins this season if things go well for them. And, at Michigan State, at Maryland, like some of your hardest opponents are at home, Oregon, Nebraska, Iowa, and some of the opponents that you should beat are on the road. So it's kind of a sneaky, tougher schedule. And I think some people realize that, just looking at it, you don't see Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Iowa. Like you see some of those teams, but not all of them. But when you kind of dig in deep to it, it's a little bit more difficult than what some people might think.
Yeah. And even, you've got 2 elite opponents in Ohio State and Oregon. Iowa, we're going to do their preview later tonight. Obviously, it'll post the day after this one. But Iowa's a hard team to get a handle on too. But they're going to be probably close to equal, maybe not equal talent, but I think they're maybe in similar places a little bit.
I think they're going to have better talent than Illinois.
Yeah, I think they'll be better. I don't know how much better. I don't know how much better, but I think those 3. I think though. Very much so, Illinois is going to be an underdog too. I think you could make a case that they're the favorite in the other 9 games. But to your point, going to Northwestern, who knows how Northwestern is this year? I feel like they're one of the biggest question marks. UCLA is another one of the biggest question marks. I'm curious with Nebraska, with Calandria at quarterback. What does that look like? And yes, that's at home. And then people, will come after us about Maryland because we always say that, it's the Mike Locksley fire Mike Locksley tour. Mostly that's me. But you get them on the wrong day. It could be a bad day for you because they have they have legit talent.
Yeah. I was gonna say, good news is the day is in October, which helps.
It's true.
Not September,
it's true.
So it's on Halloween, actually.
It's Halloween, which it's always a little, Halloween's always janky.
Yeah. We should get a costume contest for the coaches on Halloween. That would be fun.
We should tell the coaches that they need to
dress up in a costume on the sideline. Who would Bret Bielema go as?
Oof.
Who would Bert go as? I don't know. We'll have to
I feel like
that one later.
Yeah. WWE champion. I don't know which one. Maybe
a singlet on the sideline.
Yeah.
No, we don't want that, Bert. We don't want that.
King Kong Bundy. There we go.
All right. So if I'm looking at floor and ceiling record wise here, Illinois has a 7.5 win total on FanDuel. They have when I say best, I mean the highest odds to go under of any Big Ten team on their win total. They have a 7.5 win total. 7.5 was their same win total last year, and they went over that by 2 games. This year, 7.5. Will Illinois go over it again? FanDuel does not think so, especially when it's minus 180 to go under. Like I said, that is the second highest of any over-under odds. It is the highest of any under odds in the Big Ten, which is really interesting to think about. Zach, when you look at the possibility of the floor here for Illinois, let's start bad news first. What's the floor possibility here? I think it's rather low.
Yeah, it's hard because I don't know what version, like even Michigan State, like what are they going to be at Spartan Stadium?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the floor could, let me just do some thinking here for a minute.
You want me to give my floor?
Well, I honestly, it could be as low as 4-8.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
And and people might be shocked by that, but Duke, I know people will say Duke doesn't have Darian Mensah anymore. What do you mean? True,
Manny
but
Diaz
it's
is still a
still,
good coach. He's still a
yeah,
good coach.
still a good coach, still a P4 program. Yes, it's at home, but like
Mm-hmm.
that's not, that's not another UAB. It's
Mm-hmm.
not Southern Illinois. You got to go to Michigan State, at Maryland. Like I don't think you can say that they have a lot of layups
Yeah.
this year.
No, I agree. I think there's definitely a possibility here where Illinois just kind of completely collapses. And yes, they beat UAB. Yes, they beat Southern Illinois. They split Duke and Purdue, and then they split Michigan State and Maryland, especially with Michigan State and Maryland both on the road. There's definitely a possibility here. There's also a possibility they win all three of their out of conference games, lose to Ohio State, beat Purdue, and then lose the rest of their games. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
not predicting that to happen, but that very well could happen. If I'm looking at the ceiling here for this Illinois team, I got to be honest. I don't think it's any higher than 8-4. I think this Illinois team is very likely to lose to Ohio State. Very likely, if not almost completely, going to lose to Oregon. Yes, they get Oregon at home, but Oregon is not a West Coast team that seems to struggle with travel as much as some of the other ones do. I think Iowa is a very, very likely loss, and then it's hard for me to say that they're just going to win the rest of those games. I think they're going to probably lose one of those at some point, just because, like I said, you have beatable opponents there, but you're a little unlucky with your most beatable opponents are all on the road, and your least beatable opponents are all at home.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't bode well for them. So I totally get why FanDuel here is on the under for Illinois at 7.5, because I think in their best season possible, they're 8-4, which is just barely a half win over the 7.5 win total.
I'll go 9-3.
Okay.
And I actually almost thought about 10-2, but I'm going to stick at 9-3.
Okay.
If Illinois gets the offense clicking, I think there's only a couple teams on the schedule where if Illinois' defense doesn't get it together, it doesn't kill them. Like,
Okay.
or it'll only a couple teams where it would kill them. That's Ohio State and Oregon.
Okay.
But if you look at the other offenses they're playing, like they're not playing a ton of great offenses,
Yeah.
right? Like they're playing Iowa, they're playing UCLA. Now UCLA could be good. Nebraska, Maryland, like a lot of inconsistent offenses. And I think you could make a case that Illinois can outscore them if they get things clicking. And I think that's very possible.
So I think the comparison to Nebraska last year is very apt for this team. Nebraska last year, they had a very favorable schedule. I mean, they had the Penn State schedule this season. They had Michigan, at Minnesota. USC was at home at Penn State. I mean, when Michigan and at Penn State are your two toughest games, that's no shade to Michigan and Penn State. That's just you have no tier one teams in the Big Ten on your schedule, and they still went. What they go 7-6? I think it was 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, they still went 7-6. I with this tougher schedule and with me kind of relating Illinois to what Nebraska was last season, but with a better coach. Yes, the better coach is going to help, but I still, you know, it's still just going to be really, really difficult, I think, for Illinois to get much more than 8 wins. I just look at those 8 wins and say I think that's kind of the benchmark, because I don't think you can win consistently in the Big Ten if you don't have a great front seven. I,
Yeah,
I think
that's
you're just
fair.
in that type of scenario, especially when as many teams have a good running game. You know, you can say Iowa doesn't have a great offense. They're going to have a really good running game. LJ Phillips, Kamari Moulton. Northwestern, going to have a really good running game. Caleb Komalafe, Joseph Hyman. UCLA, going to have a pretty good running game. Wayne Knight. Maryland, they're not going to have much of a running game, but they are going to be able to pass the ball. So can Malik Washington get them? Michigan State, what are they going to be doing this season? They're going to be running the ball with Cam Edwards a whole lot. That offensive line, I think, is growing on me a little bit as well. So for me, I want Illinois to be good this season. Trust me, I desperately want Illinois to be good this season. But if I'm being realistic, I just can't see any more than 8 wins.
That's fair.
So,
that's fair.
All right.
What's your like actual, like, what do you actually think is going to happen?
I think they're probably going to be 6-6. I think they'll probably barely make a bowl game. So I think they'll probably get UAB, Duke, Southern Illinois. I think they'll probably get Purdue. I think they'll probably get not probably get Purdue. I think they'll almost certainly get Purdue. That's 4 wins right there. And then I think you just need 2 more. And I think you probably get Michigan State and Maryland. If you don't get those 2, I think you probably, if you get only like one of those 2, I think you probably get either Northwestern or Nebraska.
Yeah. I could see 6-6 or 7-5.
Yeah.
At this point. Yeah. I think it's
7-5 definitely possible. I'm not saying 7-5 is not possible. My lean right now is 6-6.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd either go 6-6 or 7-5 at this point.
Yeah. So, all right, good stuff there. Anything else on Illinois before we end the preview, Zach?
I mean, Illinois fans should rejoice because I am always wrong about Illinois. So you guys are going to win the national championship. That's just what's going to happen.
Congratulations, national champions.
You're going to go 6-6, but you're going to lose all the games that I think you're going to win. And you're going to win all the games that I think you're going to lose.
Now we're getting conspiracy theory. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Check out all the other season previews we got. Just did Ohio State, Indiana. Like Zach said, we got Iowa up next, and then we're going to be continuing on there. So keep watching out for what we got coming up, and we will appreciate you guys watching and listening here to the Big Ten Huddle. Have a good one. See you next time.